Yeah, so what WH's react to here now. What we're gonna do is we're gonna do a reaction to Linkara's Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 1, aka On Top of the Fourth Wall. So this is gonna be my first review. My first reaction to his videos. In the future, I will do his review of Operation Overdrive, one of the worst seasons among the franchise. And it's a funny one and a classic one at the same time. So, but before we get started, if you're new to this channel, subscribe, comment, follow me on Instagram as well. With that being said, wait a minute, let me get this thing set up so that I can do a review. I keep saying review, but reaction to the episode. Don't go nowhere first, I'll be right back. Alright, so I'm trying to get to the Linkara part so you guys can see. Alright, so we're gonna go ahead and get started with Mighty Morphin Season 1. Like I said, if you're new to this channel, comment, follow me on Instagram as well. With that being said, 3, 2, 1. It's more for time. Sorry if I stutter. Ah! Ah! Should.
That's correct, Alpha. I was afraid of that. Hey, thanks, Zordon.
Sorry about that, guys.
It's a frickin' planet at stake. Did something change the water filter in your tube lately? Ladies and gentlemen and others, welcome to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 1. Go, go, Power Rangers! 5 years ago, I started a little project called History of Power Rangers. I had done a Power Rangers homage on Atop the Fourth Wall and decided to re-watch the show, and in my re-watch, I had crazy theories and ideas that popped into my head. So I wanted to share those thoughts with people. To make matters worse, I decided to do it for every season, giving comprehensive analysis and recaps of the entire show, even for seasons that I hadn't watched before. Those videos were hosted on a service called Blip.tv that sadly no longer exists. While the original videos still exist, a lot has happened over the last 5 years, at the time of this recording anyway. Most prominently for me is that I am on YouTube now. When I began rebuilding my presence on YouTube, I re-uploaded all those videos. Sometime later, however, I was hit with 2 copyright strikes from Toei, the company that owns and produces Super Sentai, and the videos...
And Metal Hero Series as well.
However, these videos have been one of the most popular things I've ever produced, and I like being able to pay rent. As such, I have decided to re-edit all of my History of Power Rangers videos and put them up again, making them more YouTube-friendly. At the time of this video's creation, Samurai and Megaforce have had that done and are viewable through links on my website, since these videos are unlisted and I prefer to keep my channel's video uploads in order when possible. The audio of all these videos will remain mostly the same, with occasional exception like cutting out my breathing, making corrections to things I got wrong, or reducing the amount of continuous footage that I show. This video, however, is most likely to get the most amount of attention, because most people don't even seem to realize that Power Rangers kept going after Mighty Morphin. And as such, I felt it necessary to fully re-record the video so it actually sounded somewhat professional.
And let me just say this though. I've said this in my old videos all the time. There are way many different Power Ranger seasons besides Mighty Morphin. And I mean, everybody is still, you know, up in arms with Mighty Morphin. It gets too much praise when it comes to the Boom Studio Comics. I get it, but thankfully, the Shadow Grid is now putting every single Power Ranger from different seasons besides Mighty Morphin. And I'm loving the story how they're making Lord Dragon the most dangerous Ranger and yet the most demonic one, killing every single Ranger in sight. Huh, crap. What's up? Oh, my bad. Okay, you gotta go ahead. Okay. Go ahead. Sorry about that, guys. Alright, so getting back to what I was saying about the Boom Studio Comics. I'm loving what they're doing with Mighty Morphin so far, but the Shadow Grid is what finally gets me interesting because, like I said, every single Ranger is never safe. Well, not safe. That's what it says in the comics, by the way. But at least they're doing different seasons besides Mighty Morphin, and you wonder why it gets so much praise nowadays. Even I admit that I tend to draw some Mighty Morphin stuff, but I've drawn other Power Ranger seasons as well on my Instagram. So I post a lot of my drawings in there. So yeah. Back to the video.
Then again, I've probably lost most of you by now anyway, since it's taken me this long to get to the damn point, and my only real joke so far has been about Zordon's tube. Speaking of, has anyone fed him lately? I'm sure he's got the fish flakes around here somewhere. Anyway, the point is, if this is your first time here, welcome to the History of Power Rangers, an opinionated and serious analysis of a children's show utilizing Japanese footage mixed with American footage about rubber-suited monsters getting punched by people in spandex. And with a premise like that, you can see why it deserves serious analysis. Because this is a biased perspective, I fully expect people to lob hate at me for disagreeing with their opinions, and that's alright. This series is not a comparison to the source shows that Power Rangers uses footage from, collectively referred to as Super Sentai. I have no interest in the Sentai. Not that I question its quality, it's simply a matter of me not caring about it. All of us have heard from friends and loved ones about something that is a must-see, something that is the best ever, and that we do ourselves a disservice to not see it. But in the end, there's still stuff we don't see simply because we're not interested. And in this case, I grew up watching Power Rangers, and it is Power Rangers that I have come to praise. Or bury, depending on the season. I will refer to the Sentai occasionally from what little I do know, thanks to the efforts of others who have written up explanations for some of the more bizarre things that Power Rangers occasionally does, but my information is usually secondhand, so remember, it's possible the information I have is wrong. By that same token, I am not at this time interested in Super Sentai's sister series, Kamen Rider. Kamen Rider will have some influence in a few seasons, but for now, it's just not my thing. That being said, the current highest milestone goal of my Patreon, assuming you aren't watching this years later after Patreon has become a sapient being that was forced to be destroyed through chemical warfare combined with appealing to the best traits of humanity, is to review other American shows that are like Power Rangers, including VR Troopers, Beetleborgs, and yes, Kamen Rider Dragon Knight. So if you want to see that happen, feel free to send some support my way. I am not reviewing the first Power Rangers movie for a simple reason. It has nothing to do with the show.
Exactly.
For 20 plus years, Power Rangers has
stop the video once again. The first movie may not have nothing to do with the series, but it had some moments, but it still sucked. But the Turbo film, oh my god, it's so terrible. It's so bad. Why does everybody think the Turbo movie is good? It's not. So both films don't make sense. So just saying.
Some seasons leading directly into the next with recurring characters, but the movie takes place in its own separate universe, and I feel no need to cover it.
Right.
For a more comprehensive look at it, though, I did a review of a comic adaptation of it on Atop the Fourth Wall.
Even the comic is a lot worse.
Let's talk about the first season. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was an idea that Haim Saban had for several years in the 80s, in particular in 1986 producing a pilot for adapting the Sentai Bioman. Saban and partner Shuki Levy were mostly known at the time for composing music for kids shows. including but not limited to Inspector Gadget, He-Man, and the real Ghostbusters. Saban loved the idea of mixing the Japanese and American footage, saving production costs a ton, but unfortunately no one was interested in it. According to Levy, Saban carried a video cassette of it around and kept pitching it to networks. And they all thought it was the worst thing they'd ever seen. In 1988, Saban formed his own production company and made several shows, including the hit that was the X-Men animated series. However, in the early 90s, Margaret Loesch, the head of Fox Kids, was looking for a new series that'd be adventurous, fun, and silly, and Saban showed her the Bioman pilot. Loving the idea, they refined the concepts and negotiated with Toei for a different, then more recent Sentai, Kyoryu Sentai Jew Rangers, and thus Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was born. The series begins somewhere in space.
Not really.
The implication has always been that this is the moon, although in the Sentai it was not. But as the show progresses, we'll learn that the moon is weird in the Power Rangers universe. There's a breathable atmosphere, for that matter, an atmosphere at all. The gravity is normal, and we're still landing on it. Now, in some circles, people debate about whether or not this isn't actually just some other planetoid near Earth, but since future instances will refer to the villains being on the moon, we're gonna call it as such. Anyway, two astronauts find what's called a dumpster, hence the title of the first episode, Day of the Dumpster. That's something else I never got. It's not a dumpster, it's a bin or a barrel. Maybe you can get away with calling it a trash can, but most trash cans aren't made of stone or have jewels engraved in them.
Right.
But anyway, the astronauts decide to not radio in that they found an alien object, but instead decide to open the quote-unquote dumpster, releasing Rita Repulsa and her band of freaks, her Gorilla Knight Goldar, her Monster Maker and Scientist Finster, and the comic relief duo Swat and Babu. Rita Repulsa...
Back when I first watched the pilot episode of this, I always thought the skies were a bit darker due to Sentai footage. But at the same time, when the 893 version came out 25 years ago, the way they edited the Sentai footage was a bit dark and light at the same time. But in the first scene when Rita got out of the space dumpster, you can clearly see that the sky was a bit light. But in the Japanese stock footage, the original version, it was more dark. Just so you guys know, because I know, I've seen it in years.
Elsa is a sorceress, often referred to as an Empress of Evil, because alliteration makes you sound cooler than a sorceress of mild irritation. Anyway, she spent 10,000 years in the dumpster and now wishes to conquer the first planet she sees, Earth. As you saw before, Zordon, the big giant head, detects Rita's escape and decides to assemble a team of 5 teenagers to combat her. And let's meet those teenagers now. In other installments, we'll save character stuff for the end, but the problem with these early seasons is that while the characters have personalities, they don't have much in terms of an arc. First is Jason, the Red Ranger, who teaches a karate class. He is stoic and confident. Zack, the Black Ranger, is Jason's best friend and teaches what he refers to as hip-hop aikido, basically combining breakdancing and fighting. And
yet, none of the characters had any backstory whatsoever, except for Kimberly in mid-season 1 when her parents were going through a divorce. So, as for the other characters, they do not have any backstory whatsoever. So, at least the 2017 movie did it better when it comes to the Rangers' backstory. But the show made no sense whatsoever. I understand it's the most nostalgic franchise of all time. But people, let's face it, Mighty Morphin wasn't even that great. I mean, you guys can pretty much disagree with me all you want. But I'm just stating facts. However, I do have to admit one thing. The fight scenes were awesome, as well as the action and the music. The plots and the story, not so much.
Admittedly, that's kind of stupid in hindsight.
Right.
Actually, it does make for some impressive fighting moves.
Exactly.
And some silly ones, but hey, on my show, I've got a ninja-style dancer, so who am I to judge? Next, there's Trini, the Yellow Ranger. Okay, let's comment on this. Yes, the Black Ranger is black and the Yellow Ranger is Asian. Let's get this out of the way. They honestly did.
Plus, she's from Vietnam, so she's Vietnamese. Vietnamese, excuse me.
It was an honest, if horribly racist mistake, and they rectified it in future casting. most of the time. There were actually a few pilots made of the first episode, even originally taking place in a bowling alley instead of the juice bar that is used for the social gathering point in the show.
And I like the fight scenes in the pilot episode.
Actress Audrey Dubois, who is not.
I have a problem with the pilot episode when Fox Kids, and back in '99 when they decided to air it on TV for the first time. The problem with the unwanted fight scenes in the pilot episode is that when Jason kicks Bulk in the face, they block it. I don't know what's going on with the kids shows, but you guys have got to stop treating kids like stupid idiots. They seen martial arts films and TV before. Why all of a sudden you want to keep blocking shots to the head and faces every time they throw a kick or a punch? It seems to be stupid, but yet you want to shoot a scene with them punching people in the body. That's really annoying if you ask me. That's not martial arts. So,
although ironically, Tommy, who would later become the Red Ranger, was a character with Native American connections. Whoops. Anyway, Trini is also a martial artist, but it's harder to get a gauge on her character. She's probably the least developed of the original team. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the actress who played her, Thuy Trang, tragically passed away in a car crash in 2001. Trini served the purpose of translating the technobabble of the next character, Billy. Billy is the stereotypical brainy nerd, yet if you see him without bulkier clothes, his physique is actually on par with the others on the show. Billy will be a mainstay of the show for the longest time, even after he stops being a Power Ranger. And finally, Kimberly, the second to last of the original 5 to leave the series. She is the stereotypical.
I never did like Kimberly anyway.
Gymnast who loves the mall and etc. etc. Like Billy,
I heard that her actress actually hated pink. Can you blame her? Now all of a sudden she comes and do these
it's also time to meet the
Comic-Con shows years later.
Oh no, look who's here. Bulk and Skull.
Bulk and Skull last through 6 seasons of Power Rangers and are the characters that have the most development over the course of it. What started as comic relief bullies evolved into 2 characters who nobly stood up to evil. I love these 2. They're like the 3 Stooges of my generation. Yes, their comedy was often quite predictable, but they added some much-needed levity during some of the darker turns of the first few seasons.
Sit down. The building's about to fall down. I'm not finished with my ice cream yet. Now I'm finished.
Often, their comedy subplots were actually...
And he has diabetes.
...the plot of the episode, and they remain some of the most popular characters on the show. Even if they began as bullies, though not particularly good ones, since it was obvious any one of the Rangers was capable of kicking their asses, these are the 2 that went through the most changes. Since they are the longest-lasting cast members of the original, and the only ones with an arc, I consider them to be the actual main characters of the show. Incidentally, it turns out their first names are Farkas and Eugene. Yeah, I'd have gone by Skull too. While there can be very good character moments for the Rangers, they tend to be a bit on the bland side.
Yeah.
They're always trying to be goody-goods, always talking about...
Yeah, I've always hated when they do that.
Heart of the card, blah, blah, blah. In a show that really liked having clear-cut...
Okay, like you said, as long as you ignore the part where they're talking about teamwork and goody-goods, you know, always doing good by the community and all that dumb crap. Like, I get that you try to teach the kids something, but don't overdo it sometimes, dude. Like I said, season 1 wasn't that great. Although it was a good start, but it wasn't that great. It has its flaws. Some good episodes, some bad episodes, some good moments, some terrible moments. But overall, I felt like these teams are way too goody-goods to be Rangers in the first place. And to be honest... No, let me shut up.
Heroes and villains, Bulk and Skull stood in a gray area for quite a while, and their ultimate nobility served as a perfect capstone to their characters. While in the first season they served primarily as bullies, there were times when their better nature shined through. 2 specific examples come to mind. The first is when they adopt a pig. Now, ultimately, the pig proved to just be a monster, and they were frightened of it when that happened, but they seem to actually be nice to it and want to take care of it after adopting it. The other is in the episode Crystal of Nightmares, where the two are put into a dream state.
God, I hated that episode.
Becoming superheroes and saving the world. Now, in the dream, they can't drive the Megazord properly, but I think the fact that they want to be good guys, even if they are selfish and inept, will help come into play in later seasons. But now back to the plot. Rita launches an attack on Earth, causing an earthquake to develop. As people jog lightly out of the juice bar in panic, the 5 teens suddenly decide to stay exactly where they are, planted to one spot, before being teleported away by Zordon. Zordon explains the plot of the show, that they have to fight Rita using morphers that will harness the power of ancient beasts like dinosaurs, the saber-toothed tiger, and the mastodon. We also meet Alpha 5. Alpha can get pretty annoying early on with his constant proclamations of "ay ay 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 ay." But
man, Alpha got on my nerves back then.
Being able to help do all the things Zordon can't do since, you know, dude doesn't have to. The teens don't buy any of this, which I guess isn't that surprising, but one would think the teleportation, tube head, and robot would be compelling evidence. Rita is somehow able to discern that Zordon is doing all of this, and while we learn later that no one can enter the command center without a power coin, the source of the Morpher's power, she does send a squad of her foot soldiers, the Putty Patrol, to attack and kill the Rangers. The Putties are pretty cool. Sure, it's just a guy in gray spandex, but it's the face that really makes it.
Oh yeah.
Kind of like a deformed Cyberman face. What's amusing to me in hindsight is that if she hadn't attacked them, they very well may have never become Rangers, since during the fight they decide to use the Morphers and, for the first time, become the Power Rangers. Since this is lifted from the Sentai footage, they are immediately teleported into a city to use that footage. They also get their Zords, the giant robots that, well, let's be honest, most of the time the individual Zords are pretty useless. Sure, sometimes they'll use them individually, but hey, it's cooler to have a big single robot instead of 5 smaller ones. The original Megazord is classic.
Yeah.
From the horns to the big-ass chest to the power sword.
I love the Megazord.
I love it because it's just so simple.
Right.
A blocky robot that looks like he can kick your ass.
But at the same time, it's a guy in a Megazord. It's a guy in a costume, so
usually gets the most screen time and also an alternate.
Oh yeah.
Or just an alternate Zord altogether. While the rest basically just exist to be combined into the Megazord. As a first season, especially the earlier episodes, there were a lot of goofy ideas that were put in because they were still finding out their place and how they wanted the show to work. For example, in the second episode, we see this super duper martial arts move.
Which I have that episode in the VHS tape right now. The problem is that my my VCR doesn't work anymore, so I need to get rid of that.
Elements seen in the first few episodes wouldn't really make any reappearances later.
Right.
For example, the Rad Bug. The Rad Bug is one of the silliest, most illogical things Power Rangers ever did. Billy invented a flying car that could enter the command center somehow. We have to assume he used technology from the command center to build this thing, because otherwise Billy just invented a flying car out of crap that he had in his garage. And you know what? It's awesome! Why the hell didn't they ever bring this back? By the 17th episode, we had what was probably one of the best things they ever did for the series.
Before I get into this clip, I just want to say that Tommy is the most overrated Green Ranger of all time. Back when he was evil, he was like a legit boss, beating the brakes out of the Rangers until the 5th parter, when they destroyed the sword that was giving him the spell. They broke the spell. Once he became good, he sucked. And then in late season 1, when he came back, but Zordon gave him the Green Ranger powers once again, but they don't last long because his powers are temporary. So, but in season 2, he just sucked. I kind of prefer Tommy as White Ranger, because I know there's going to be a whole bunch of Green Ranger fanboys commenting on my video, but I could care less. It's my opinion. But regardless, the Green with Evil saga is what made Mighty Morphin Season 1 more recognizable sagas in franchise's history. But Jason David Frank did a good job playing Tommy Oliver, but you already know the deal in real life, so.
And it's had a lasting impact to the point where even the advertising for the final episode of the season 20 years later was all about his return.
Right.
Jason David Frank as Tommy Oliver, the Green Ranger. Love him or hate him, this was the character that really cemented Power Rangers for the audience. In a 5-part story, since this was in the days when new episodes of the series were shown on weekdays, called Green with Evil, Rita unveiled her plan to create her own evil Power Ranger, the Green Ranger. Where she got the power coin we'll never know, especially given what we learn later concerning their creation. Unfortunately, the Green Ranger is also where we see some of the seams fall apart between Japanese and American footage. In the Sentai, the Green Ranger had a rubber shield, whereas the American one was cloth. And sadly, they had to make do with what they had, and sometimes suits and props are damaged in transit, assuming they get sent at all. It's pretty shabby and terrible looking, sadly. Also, trivia note. The crew would routinely lose the morpher props, so they would just go out to the toy store and buy a morpher in order to use it for the show if they had to. The toys were just that accurate. In any case, the Green Ranger was where things suddenly got interesting. For one thing, the fact that it was 5 parts long showed us that this was an epic like no other. No other kid shows did 5-parters at the time, and the guy was just badass. He wasn't some weird-ass monster with a goofy gimmick. He was an actual human being who was able to outfight the group. He looked different, his weapon was different, and he had a Zord that rivaled the others, rising from the ocean like Godzilla. He wrecked the command center, cut the Rangers off from the guidance of Zordon, and even got into the Megazord to disable that as well. Each episode felt unique, telling a new chapter of the tale as we saw the Rangers having to really step up their game. Billy becoming more acquainted with the technology of the command center, Jason being put in mortal peril as he's kidnapped and has to face Goldar and the Green Ranger without being able to morph.
Let me just say this about Jason. He is my favorite Red Ranger of all time. And shout out to also St. John, by the way. Even though he was the youngest member of the original cast, 18 years old at the time, he still made an impact throughout our childhoods. But he was the first Ranger to ever fought Goldar 3 times more than Tommy. He fought Goldar in the Green with Evil saga. Then he fought him in the Green Candle saga. And then he fought him the 3rd time, Morphed, in Missing Green Season 2. But once Tommy became the White Ranger, he fought Goldar like multiple times. So, yeah, but I've always preferred Jason and Goldar. But Jason is by far one of my favorite Red Rangers ever. So, no lie.
It's glorious. It also introduced another general for Rita.
And plus, I just love Goldar because the puppet mask that they got him doing in season 1 when he fought Jason in Dark Dimension, his eyes look so scary. He looked like the Dragon Zord 2.0 when it comes to the glowing red eyes. Like, I just love that suit that they got him on, and it looks so good the way he moves his mouth and everything. So each time when he turns his head, his red eyes begins to glow a little bit, and it kind of looks like the Dragon Zord a little bit, in my opinion. So,
Scorpina. In my original version of this video, I neglected to mention Scorpina because she has no impact on anything.
Right.
She's in the first season here and there, appears again at the beginning of season 2, reappears for another episode in the season, and that's the end of her. Ultimately, the Rangers broke the spell Rita had placed on Tommy, and he officially joined the team. It's just a really well-written and suspenseful story, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They also started the first official romance with Tommy and Kimberly, which, while not really going anywhere with the relationship beyond their dating, it's mostly...
yeah, once, like I said, once Tommy joined the team, he sucked. All falling in love with Jason and stuff.
Of issue of the day, monsters, Zord fights, and finally Tawdry.
Yeah, it's basically like that every single season and every episode.
Pretty good about their own continuity. There's the occasional bizarre hiccup. For example, there's an episode called Life's a Masquerade, a rather enjoyable standalone episode featuring some great bits by Bulk and Skull. Where Rita introduces her super putties, nearly indestructible versions of her old putties. The problem is that the episode right before it, Gung Ho, already introduced the Super Putties, and the
I mean, I don't know why they did that back then, because
Super Putty both times. Gung Ho is notable for another aspect, the introduction of a new Zord, Titanus. It's a big Brachiosaurus-looking thing that could combine together with the Megazord and Dragon Zord to become the Ultra Zord. Because remember, kids, the only thing cooler than one giant robot is a bunch of giant robots merging together to become an even bigger robot. Anyway, eventually the show ran into a bit of a problem. See, a lot of the fight scenes were dependent on the Sentai footage, and, well, there was only so much of it, particularly of the Green Ranger, since his Sentai equivalent actually died partway through Jew Ranger. Now, they solved that issue by writing him out of the show. In the two-parter, The Green Candle, Rita unveils a magic candle that, once fully melted, will return the Green Ranger power.
like I said,
Why the hell she
Tommy, I mean, Goldar looks like the Dragon Zord. Every time they shoot, they shot his eyes
Still, as evil plans
in
go,
like certain scenes.
better than her usual rigmarole of trying to ruin the teenagers' days by sending putties to cause minor inconveniences. Plus, as the Spoony one once pointed out, using a candle to take over the world. Well, that's pretty hardcore. The Rangers fought valiantly, and Jason himself tried to stop the candle, but ultimately failed. In order to prevent Rita from getting her hands on the Green Ranger powers, Tommy transfers them to Jason, granting him his shield.
One of the most iconic scenes in Power Rangers history. Tommy giving the coin to Jason to become,
We'll get to that next
well,
time.
the Red Dragon Ranger, I mean.
Was also a brilliant move from a marketing perspective. Tommy was a popular character, and instead of overexposing him, limiting his appearances for special occasions later meant that kids would be more inclined to tune in the hopes of seeing him during those episodes.
Right.
Bear in mind, they didn't actually need to write him out of the show, especially for what they ended up doing later for the season. But this little bit of continuity really helps ensure that there is an ongoing story and makes kids want to see what the next episode is going to be like. Which brings us to Return of an Old Friend.
We are in 1994, ladies and gentlemen.
Which is kidnap the teen's parents and ransom them for the power coins. They also take control of Billy's mind and force him to take the Dragon Dagger. This is the first time we actually see their parents, and in true silly fashion, most of them dress color-coded like their kids, with Jason's parents wearing red and Skull's parents wearing punk attire. In fact, Bulk's parents seem the most normal. Our heroes are forced to give up the coins, but of course Goldar doesn't hold up his end of the bargain and keeps the parents. However, Jason reveals that he still has the Dragon Coin. They recruit Tommy once again and infuse him with Zordon's own energy. However, they know it's only a temporary measure and it's likely the powers could give out during a fight. After one of those fights, Tommy's able to retrieve the
I remember that too.
Coins. And while he's now back as the Green Ranger, the group knows that the rejuvenation of his powers is only temporary. Besides for the running subplot of
Which is why he still sucked as the Green Ranger, because
Zach's pursuit of Angela.
he wasn't even that strong as fans make him out to be.
It's actually a nice change to see that the teams weren't successful at everything they did,
Yeah.
like it seemed to be, though Angela's heart seemed to be won over whenever Zach did genuinely good things for her. Or when he bribed her.
Yeah.
The character pretty much disappeared, though, so ultimately it was for naught. One particular aspect that occurred to me as I was watching the later...
Oh yeah, the fight scenes got better in late season 1, especially Billy's. I didn't pause the video for a minute.
Only after they...
I've said this 2 years ago about Billy's character when it comes to the fight scenes. All the original 6 Rangers, Haya's voices changed in 3 seasons. Billy went from Hiya, Hiya to Hiya. You know, his Haya's has that type of horse sound, like Hiya, Hiya. You know what I'm saying? But Tommy, his Haya stays the same. But Jason's, his Haya's changed, until Zeo. But everyone else stayed the same, But overall, I think the martial arts fight scenes got a bit better in season 1. That's the only thing that got going on was the action and the fight scenes, the music. But like I said, it wasn't even that great when it comes to certain episodes. My only issue with the original cast is that they were too goody two-shoes and stuff. You know what I'm saying? So...
morphed. Otherwise, they relied on tricks or misdirection in order to defeat them. In fact, Tommy's ability to fight off a single-handedly...
He was the only Ranger that was able to beat him off.
However, in a later episode, Zack was able to fight off a squad of putties himself too. Billy's
shout out to the Zack man.
In particular would change. In the beginning, he could barely fight off one putty, let alone a whole group of them. But by the end, he was able to hold his own in a fight beyond the stereotypical nature of his character. Mind you, some of this was simply narrative convenience, but it did hang in my mind as I was watching.
Including some soundtracks from Season 1, one of the most memorable songs like Combat, Fight, We Need a Hero.
40 episodes.
Ron Weissman was responsible for Mighty Morphin in the first place, so...
With things looking grim, even parts of the Zords getting sliced off, but of course they win through at the end. Zordon offers them a chance to give up their powers, that they shouldn't have to keep up the fight forever, but they say they'll keep going. I imagine the original plan was for Rita to be destroyed, hence the offer, but of course, she was not. With the ever-growing...
Okay, here's the overall thought about this, though. They could have easily... No, Zordon could have easily teleported the Rangers to her pallets and just fight her one by one until they can't fight anymore. And Jason can somehow use his power blaster to open the space dumpster and pretty much have her sent back to space where she belonged and bring in Lord Zed. Think about that. Well, in '94, when they decided to come back with new episodes, have Lord Zed come back, you know, with the same attitude, but with a different attitude. Create monsters. Rangers can use their dinosaurs to fight monsters, like that sort of thing.
To keep it on, but the first season, uniquely enough, had 60 episodes in it. So how did they fill up the remaining 20? They actually contacted the creators of Jew Rangers to produce new original footage that would only be used in Power Rangers, referred to by fans as Jew 2. Just damn! The problem that Power Rangers continually faced throughout its existence is its low budget. Yet what the hell kind of budget did this first season have?
Zoo 2 actually filmed in '93, but our season started in '94, so...
original footage with all these characters, having the new footage made by the Japanese producers, and as we'll see, all new sets and villains made exclusively for this show. Now, as I said at the introduction, I started noticing an underlying theme of this season, or at least a motif. It's likely not something that was intentional on the part of the writers, but I feel like it's there regardless. A continual struggle between magic, or at least steampunk fantasy for
magic and technology. It's what Season 1 is known, well, Mighty Morphin is known for. Basically, the whole Power Ranger franchise is known for in general, so...
Completely on opposite sides. Rita's palace is full of magic trinkets, and its overall atmosphere is meant to evoke a witch's lair. Her monster-making machine turns clay figures and pops them out as actual living beings. She has a magic wand to make her monsters grow, and she routinely uses magic items to achieve her goals, either calling upon some ancient spirit or, say, using a candle to take away superpowers. Even the monsters themselves tended to have a more mythological or mystical bent to them, or at the very least range on the fantastic. On the other side of the fence are the Power Rangers.
The technology.
The center is a high-tech facility, and the morphers themselves are an impressive feat of technology, accessing something called the morphing grid to give them their powers. While Zordon may have been described as a wizard before they fleshed out his backstory, he clearly prefers the use of the technology that the group has at their disposal. Alpha himself is a robot, and the Rangers use giant machines to fight against Rita's magically created monsters. Billy is usually the tech go-to guy and also invents new devices to help the team out. Hell, a little kid friend of his, who I swear is supposed to be his brother, even invents a virtual boy. Technology is presented as something extraordinarily necessary and useful to the team and the world at large. Mysticism and magic, while useful sometimes, are presented as tools of evil. What's interesting about this is that by the time we reach Zeo, that position will have swung more towards a balance. One thing I definitely neglected to mention originally was, well, the pretty obvious Wizard of Oz connection.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much of that was actually part of Zyuranger's conception, but it's pretty cool how much of an influence it has.
The problem with Zyuranger is that they use too much kids in different episodes rather than the Rangers themselves.
An evil witch, whom even Barbara Goodson, the voice actress for Rita, was told to do a Wicked Witch of the West impersonation, who had at her disposal a flying monkey. It's okay to wear your influences on your sleeve like this and really show how creative you can get with it. I mean, it's not like the show actually has a Dorothy figure. I've got to imagine somewhere in 800 episodes.
Yeah, Goldar was an awesome villain in Mighty Morphin.
On the show, but unfortunately, they're kind of superfluous. There's Miss Appleby, the teacher at Angel Grove High, who shows up the most. Principal Kaplan, who is really just there for the occasional comic relief when his toupee gets knocked off, because baldness is funny, I guess. But the other most recurring character is, of course, Ernie.
Too bad his actor died in 2008.
That he never really did much
died of heart attack.
From occasionally helping out the teens with something they were doing. Because he has kind of a quiet charm to him. Like the friendly barkeep who's always there to dispense sage wisdom. Hell,
and what made me... Let me pause the video one more time. What made me appreciate this episode of Happy Birthday Zach is when they did a Batman reference. When he said, well, when Power Rangers do the Angel Grove and Batman lives in Gotham City, Power Rangers has never made any other reference to any Hollywood stuff. So this is the first time that they actually done this. Even the movie when Ivan Ooze mentioned something about the Brady Bunch. Wow.
With larger than life stuff, while Ernie would be the one to help them with stuff all too human. Overall, the success of the show was probably not built on the most engaging of circumstances. While the acting is mixed in the early episodes, the characters do all eventually grow into a position where they're completely believable in their roles, as long as you ignore them preaching about community this, environmentalism that, and teamwork.
So, I mean, sometimes season one can be the most
actors, since it comes off as not knowing
can become unbearable to watch.
Seriously, or in some cases, they're just terrible actors. Like the aforementioned episode with Billy's not brother, with lots of people clearly dubbed in.
I owe you an apology.
Yeah, he sucked.
I overreacted to something that wasn't your fault.
If I had to speculate, what I'd say really helped its success was the action.
Exactly.
The older American show at the time was showing fighting and choreography.
I said the same thing. The music, the fight scenes, the action.
Charm to the series that made people, especially kids, want to watch it. The growth of good storylines aided it, especially multi-parters where the stakes were high and you honestly weren't sure how they were going to resolve the situations. And while there were, of course, those times when logic broke through and you asked, say, if Rita knows their identities, why doesn't she blow up their houses? But all in all, the first season was a good start to the show, even if 60 episodes was a bit much.
Yeah.
Especially when one considers that most of them follow the same damn formula. However, things would only go uphill in terms of storytelling in season 2.
The girl, or whatever, me and her best friend.
Alright, let me go ahead and say this about season 1. And this is my last time saying this. Season 1 was not that great, but it did have some classic moments. It did have some classic moments. It had great moments. But overall, I think Mighty Morphin, like he said, is a great start. But overall, it did have some good episodes and bad episodes. But at the end, it's what made Mighty Morphin, it's what made Power Rangers start in the first place. But like I said, there are way better seasons besides Mighty Morphin, so that's my opinion. If you guys enjoyed this video, subscribe, comment, follow me on Instagram, WSReacts, as I charge my phone, and I'll see you later.